What's going on, bro? I know you was just saying that you was out here saving the world. Saving one person at a
Not
time.
yeah, yeah, not even,
um, I know craziest morning, craziest morning. I
yeah,
already know.
ridiculous. All right, yeah.
Uh, how you feel about that? How did you feel about that in that
I'm
moment?
still as of right now, this very second, I'm still waiting on like an update on like the actual dude. Um,
Yeah,
for better or for worse, I just want to know if he's all right, right? Like that's like the important thing for me. Like I said, like once again, for better or for worse, because he was in pretty bad shape. Even when I first pulled up.
yeah.
But it was a lot to process. It happened what like
W-
four hours.
Without going over the details of it, because
Yeah.
it just happened. You want to tell the audience on what happened with with the least amount of description.
Yeah. Um, hmm, how would I minimize this? I guess. Uh, Pretty much, man. For reference, I live on base. Um, on post housing. 7:30 ish a.m. 8 a.m. o'clock or 8 a.m. I get woken up. Something crazy is going down. Apparently gunshots were fired. Dude is hit lying down in his home. I make sure I like lock my family down before running out there. Throw on my kit, grab whatever like little medical supply I have since moving here.
Yeah,
Throw it on, run out there just in case there's a threat. So out there, run into the house, and there's a dude just laying there. He's hit, and I just start doing whatever I can. Any T triple C for the people that don't know, meaning tactical casualty combat care. The best I know how, right, in the situation that I'm in, and man, by the time I got there, he was already in rough shape, anyways. So little breath, weak pulse. So the best I could do was just try to keep his heart going. So chest compressions pretty much till the authorities showed up, and then started.
yeah.
But yeah, right now just waiting on an update. My bosses came by, make sure me and my family were good, and they said they would keep me in the loop if anything. And I'm sure like the news will report out what it is. You know what I'm saying? I'm hoping for
Yeah.
the best case scenario. Because then that would make me feel a lot better. But if it's the latter, then that's gonna suck. But we'll just roll with the punches. That's just how it is.
Shit. So, do you, obviously from the Marine Corps to the 82nd, did any of the teachings actually click when you were there, or like was it just like like we know this stuff, I
Yeah.
know what to do, or was it like you kind of like, yeah, I remember this, I remember practicing this, and so on
It
and
was
so on.
a mix, man. It was a mix because it was such it was a panic. Like it happened so fast. Like I went from like my bed to downstairs in like it was like a fever dream almost. How I ended up even doing chest compressions on this dude, right?
Yeah,
Um, the most important thing was to just like stay calm and kind of like I guess remember your training. You know what I mean? Even though it wasn't like a training environment or deployment or like a combat mission or anything like that. It was just like being able to talk myself through like there's certain things I do know, however small those things are, and just talking myself through those processes, making sure he's good, and then being like, okay, like this isn't working anymore. It's time to do um, what I do know. You know what I mean?
yeah.
And that's like the most important thing, because there was a bunch of people in there. There was like kids involved, and
Oh
just
shit.
yeah, there was like getting that command and control and just being like, yo, like this is what I need you to do. Take down this information. Take that kid out of here. Just wait out there, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I mean? Like that helps a ton to keep like
My
keep
man,
mind
my man's
clear.
directing fire.
Yeah,
Keep over there.
all over the place. But yeah, the dude, there was an off-duty sheriff there who like helped a lot. You know what I mean? Keep everything.
Yeah,
Well, he was on team before me, but he had just got off shift. He like worked like the night shift, so he
yeah.
was also just like he didn't have any kit, he didn't have anything. He was just like there, just trying to get on the phone with the police and everything. And yeah, so like as for um as for the training piece that you asked, like it definitely helped. You know what I mean? Give me a general direction. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's just general direction, which is great.
So you was talking about, you mentioned the kids and things like that, and I'm like, I get, how do you feel about being in the military, like in situations like that? Because obviously you have Mav, that's running around. Like,
Yeah,
how do
yeah,
you think like how do you go from okay, like I need to go help somebody, but then you're just like make sure your family is good. Like,
yeah, yeah. It's
is that kind of like the partnership between you and your wife, and you just know like she's
what?
gonna handle this whole
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. No, it was It's funny you mentioned that. It's because I didn't even like think about that piece, right? And at the end, like I was talking to Jomi, which is my wife for the people who don't know. Yeah, I was talking to her afterwards, and we are like, she was like, "Oh, like I'm so proud of you. You did your best." And I was like, I'm proud of you too. Like, and I didn't even realize how much of a piece that she actually played until everything calmed down. Right.
Yeah,
First things first was locking down my family, my home. You know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna be of no use to anyone if they're not locked down.
yeah,
But I also didn't really think, not to bring up, I didn't really think about the fact that like I could have just said like, fuck that. I'm just gonna make sure my family is like locked down, and that's all that matters.
yeah,
So I didn't really think about that. You know what I mean? I honestly didn't think about that. It's kind of weird to think about that. Like someone would willingly run over to an unknown situation to help someone when their family
mm-hmm,
or instead of staying with them.
exactly,
But I think that's also like that. That's just that piece that like uh, being an asset and not a liability. You know what I mean? There's no
yeah,
I wouldn't want any human being to be able to at least be helpful in a situation like that and not be able to if they can, right? And I have full trust and confidence that Jomi was gonna, I can absolutely trust the mother of my child to just be on the phone and be with my kid and keep him calm or at least safe while I have to go do what I choose to.
yeah,
You know what I'm saying? So I guess it was like that understood, like that unspoken understanding, especially because like she came upstairs because she was the one who noticed it initially, and she was like, she got up or she like yelled at me. She was like, "This is happening. You got to go help." And I was like, "Okay." Like it wasn't like, "Oh my God, stay here." You know what I mean? It was like, you know, um,
yeah. Like, so
you have,
Jomi knows, she
yeah,
knows, like she
yeah,
knows who you are, how helpful you can be,
yeah.
and she just kind of was like, "Go save the
Go,
world, Captain America."
go.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. Go do something.
is this something? Is this something that y'all talked about slash practice, or is it something that is it like the first time like ever being in this? No communication. I've never talked about this before. It hasn't been practiced, or like, is this the first time exposing to this?
Um, that's a good question, man. Because we've always like, I mean, there's always been that like conversation that's like necessarily about just like being prepared. Not necessarily for a situation like this, but just in case anything happens, right? Because the way the world's been going, it's insane, right? Everybody needs to be prepared
Yeah,
to do something or to get away from something in a quick manner, especially with kids. When you're responsible for others, right? We've never had like a conversation piece like, "Hey, this is what we're gonna do in this situation," or we're gonna train for this, et cetera, et cetera. We've had conversations about her like attending like women's defense classes and like things like that. But those are just
yeah,
pieces, nothing we ever actually practiced or done. But I think that's also just the nature of like who we both are. Just we just want to be helpful. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Which is great because I mean we've never practiced this before or anything, and for people who've never practiced before, I think we did our absolute best, and it was more helpful than it was hurtful.
It sounds like it. It sounds like y'all didn't like for people that didn't practice it, that didn't really, kind of like plan this out. It sounds like y'all executed really well, and then like you said, like you kind of did everything that you needed to do without like second guessing. Like, hey, my family needs me, da da da, because you was already like, Jomi got it. Like,
Yeah, yeah. Like I have full
Jomi,
confidence. I was never at any point like maybe when everything died down and like um because Jomi was able to do her essentially her job, right? I was able to focus on what was ahead of me, and
yeah,
once everything died down, Jay stayed in the home with like we put on like Miss Rachel, so he would like kind of relax, um, just to keep him still, so he's not freaking out. But he stayed, at home, and that's when like when everything died down, the adrenaline went away. I saw Jomi. I was like, "Yo, how's Jace? Go check on him."
yeah,
I don't care what they say. Like, make sure he's like straight. And yeah, it's an interesting piece. Like I said, it was so fresh. It happened this morning. I haven't been able to like really dissect the situation. But yeah, that's a good point. Like, because of her, I was able to like lock in. You know what I mean?
Okay, and I didn't really even think about this until like recently, but I guess like this goes into the whole idea of, I guess, knowing your role in relationships. And I don't want to say gender roles because gender roles is very,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
guess, narrow, whatever the case is. But this is the thing that I guess people talk about when they say like, yo, like as a man, you're supposed to go make action. And I talked about this with Davion, and like, as a guy, you're supposed to take action while, your wife, your girl, whoever is supposed to support you. And I guess this is a perfect example of like knowing that you were able to execute and your wife was able to support, and you was just like, I already know this is good. We don't even have to practice this shit. Like,
yeah. Yes,
damn.
good point. I didn't even yeah. Like I said, I didn't think about it until you brought it up. But like all of that, like there was like a prioritization essentially that happened in my brain where I was like, okay, as soon as I'm out the door, this is what I'm focused on. I don't have to worry about
Yeah,
what's behind because I know somebody has that. And then and it's not like to say like I stopped caring, you know what I mean?
yeah,
But as soon as everything died down and that prioritization like list like shifted, they were back on the forefront of my mind. And I was like, okay, where are they? Are they okay? Et cetera, et cetera. Um, yeah, it was a really good point.
that's crazy. And
Yeah,
it, because I was, I told you like being married in the military, like how like I guess it's very essential, especially when you're in these situations. Never planned it, obviously, never, and then we have deployments and things like that, but you could see that how the person you choose is going to be very detrimental, especially while being in, because
yeah,
when you're deployed and you have kids and things like that,
yeah. It gets tough.
you're not trying to think about shit like that.
Yeah, it gets tough. And I had a conversation. We had a conversation a while ago about like schools and things like that. Because I'm still trying to get after certain schools.
Yeah,
But certain schools, require time away. I want to deploy again. You know what I mean? I want to go do my job in an austere environment, whatever that looks like. But
yeah,
that time away, and then with a kid, in a household now, those are, I'm not single. I can't just pick up and go and volunteer for everything without having that conversation first.
yeah,
But there's someone else to think about that's going to be having to handle those things, and it's not that easy. And we had that conversation a while ago, and we kind of got into a bit of an argument, and it was because looking back on it, like I kind of expected, I have to like rear in my expect or I forgot what the phrase is, but it's kind of just like reel in my expectations on what
yeah,
support looks like, right? Meaning like you got all the support, you got all these service members that go out and do crazy shit all the time, and their spouses there, and they're supportive, but you never really see like the talks that happen behind the doors, or like the
yeah,
sad, or like the arguments or whatever the case is. And I kind of got caught up in like the kind of looking for unrealistic support is how I phrased it, right? Like every time I told her something, I was just like, hey, like I want to do this. It requires me X amount of time to be away. And she kind of like huff and puff and roll her eyes, and she'd be like, okay, like whatever. And I would get upset because I'd be like, yo, like you don't support me.
yeah, 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 yeah. You're supposed to be helping me out, and
I
yeah,
do, but like, it sucks and this and that. And I was just like, and I would get upset because I'm like, oh, what doesn't sound like you really support me, this and that, blah, blah, blah. It just, yeah. So like support comes in like different ways for tough situations like that. So, I know for me, it's a learning experience and I gotta gauge what that looks like. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
understand what I'm asking of my partner. You know what I mean? We've been married for since 2019. Every day is a
2019.
fucking learning experience. We've been together longer than that, but every day is, you learn something new. You learn how to navigate different situations and things like that, especially in being in a service that's constantly changing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, and it's crazy that you mentioned it because you guys been together longer than that
Hmm.
in a completely different branch. So, and I think you guys got married like almost 1 year before you actually even left that branch. So, doing like her being supportive throughout Marine Corps deployments and Army deployments and things like that is not as easy as everyone tries to, just be like, oh, just
Not at all.
yeah, you just oh, I just wait for my husband to come home from
Yeah,
deployment. It's like, nah, not at all. That's
yeah.
not how it is. The getting ready to leave, the getting ready to come back. Um, how many how many wills have you rewrote?
Oh, uh, rewrote probably like three.
Three.
Probably
It's
like
crazy.
they stay pretty stagnant for like the first two, and then the
Hmm.
last one, like we're talking Jace, the dogs, her. So that's
Yeah.
like completely rewritten. And then the stuff that like uh, certain people had to be written out because
Yeah.
relationships
Yeah. Yeah.
there. That ain't looking too hot no more. So it's just always a constant. So far,
Damn.
hopefully it stays that way. I don't gotta rewrite no more.
Hope. Yeah. But it's funny. That goes into this next topic.
Mhm.
Hold on one second. The crazy thing that you was just talking about, right? You was talking about like what we do in the military and things like that. And something that we always talk about is why do we want to deploy? And I've had this conversation with people multiple times, and they're like, "Why would you want to?" And da 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 da, and so on and so on. And I'm like, y'all don't understand. There's like a burning desire to feel like you need that sense of danger. I don't know what it is,
Yeah,
but we need we need a fight, right? And I say like it's we need a purpose, even though we have a purpose, right? Like just living day by day and things like that. But something about deploying, something about going to a different country, something about being put in a more dangerous situation. I guess it gives us more of a sense when we come back home. It's kind of like we earn the love when we come back home. Like,
yeah, yeah. That's a good point, and it's I always had not beef necessarily, right? Because I mean, the older I get, the more mature I realize that especially with a kid now, like how we just talked about, like relationships and things like that.
yeah,
Going away sucks. Like it's just when you got people here you want to be with, that time away, it does suck. You know what I mean? So you kind of got to balance that. But I've always coming out of recently coming out of the schoolhouse, like some of the kids are like, oh, I don't want to deploy. I'm scared to deploy and this and that, blah blah. And it's okay, right? Like that's totally fine.
yeah,
You do join for whatever you choose to join for whatever benefit, right? But I think there needs to be like some expectation management in what your prime like, role is in this organization or in any like professional fighting organization, right? Like you don't you don't train MMA every single day to not fight, right?
perfect. Yeah,
But whether it's sparring or in an actual amateur professional fight, you don't train MMA for no reason, right? And if you do and you do it just for fitness, I guarantee you've always thought about like, I wonder what it'd be like if I actually fought or if I
if you
sparred.
actually fought, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely,
you
yeah,
may or may not like it, right? But there's always that like it's akin to like it's like being on the bench, right? When you're stateside, you're training, you're doing your job, whatever the case is, right? You don't actually do your job, or I would say very little service members, in my opinion, do their job to the degree that it's meant to be done stateside, right? Because stateside, you're just everything's a training environment. Everything's training. Everything's notional.
shit,
Nothing's actually like quote unquote real, right? There's very little MOSs that do that, um, and you know what I mean by that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
But like to deploy for me is to actually do your job, right? Like maintenance admin, like we're just training the whole time. When
whole
we were
time,
training the whole time. When we deployed, we were actually running combat operations in, insert whatever country we're running combat operations in. It's game
yeah.
time. You know what I mean? Whether it was maintenance admin or supply or whatever, you're doing it you're actually doing your job. You're off the bench.
When you're supposed to be, like you
Yeah.
said, yes, you're off the bench, like you said, like that's a perfect way to put it. Damn.
Yeah. So people are like, I try to explain it that way to people, especially like newer like kids who join. They're like, "Oh, I don't want to deploy this and that." Blah. I'm like, "Okay, do you never want to do your job?" They're like, "Well, what do you mean? I'm doing my job." I'm like, "You say that until you get deployed, and then you
Yeah,
see because the way you do your job there is completely different than how you do your job here. Completely different. Every a lot of things that you would normally do, all those processes, all that bullshit, it goes out the window.
thrown right in the
Out the
garbage,
out the window.
garbage.
Yeah, when it's game like when you're on the the notional court, you know what I mean? Like it's everything is completely different, and it's just you see how much like play you have and like how much you actually can affect. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Which is like, you see like the actual effects of your job, no matter how small like they are, how like insignificant you think your job is, right? Uh, yeah, and that's how I describe it. Like, and yeah, it's just like
that
it's like a sports analogy that I use.
that's
Like,
a great way to put it. Because you said it doesn't matter how small your job is. When you deploy, that's when you're gonna see how important your job is.
yeah,
And
you can.
a perfect example, like maintenance admin, ALIMS, S6. When we went to Japan, right? Not a combat deployment in any sense, but there was a moment where we needed, we had no computers, no connectivity at all, and it was the craziest thing to watch them like kind of like to watch like workflow slow down so drastically because we didn't have computers, we didn't have connectivity, we didn't have a server, we didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, and
Mm-hmm.
watching them hand jam stuff, having to walk over to this other building to do stuff, and you're like, oh shit, my job really matters, right? Like, especially on setting up and deconstruction. So I was like, oh shit. So like those first week, I think it was like the first week or so of trying to get computers, trying to get everything set up, trying to get phone lines and everything else. And you're like, damn, like, okay. Where I remember, like, I was on days and nights. And then eventually I ended up putting on nights because I needed support from the states and things like that. I was like, what the hell?
Yeah,
And it completely, like you said, it completely shifts your mindset on like, oh, my job isn't just this bullshit, cush job where I get to kick up, da da da. Maybe when everything is set up, but until everything is set up,
yeah, you're working. That's
you're
why the
gonna
work.
stress.
Yeah, that's why the work schedule the way it is when you're deployed, 7 days a week, 12 on, 12 off. Like, no matter what your job is, like, and that's I always use a sports analogy, and it's crazy because I'm not a sports guy at all, but it's like the
Not
best
even
way
slightest.
to. It's like why do it's like being getting drafted to the NBA and you're just on the bench the whole time. You're not satisfied. Why are you in the NBA? You got drafted for what?
Shit.
It doesn't like it doesn't make sense. And then like the dangerous piece is more just like I think that boils down to like the type of person you are, right? Like for me personally, like I wouldn't necessarily. I mean, I guess yeah. I was gonna say I wouldn't necessarily chase danger, right? But
You do, but you do.
yeah, I think it's like it's a combination of things, man. There's a combination of like you got like the ego, you got like clout, those things built in, but then you also have that like that sense of self that all mixes in. It mixes it in together, and then you get this
Yeah.
result and this feeling when you do something dangerous and when you do something that's important that just makes you feel um like you've accomplished something, right? Because like doing dangerous stuff is not recommended.
Not at
All
all.
all the way from like the time you're born until you're living as an adult, right? Nobody wants to live quote unquote dangerously. Nobody wants to do anything. Everything is viewed as like difficult or hard. And everybody has their own scale for that, right? But like I don't know, my philosophy on it is that like what's the point of having this like fucking meat shell and like this spirit, these bones, whatever, if like I don't even know what they're made of. I don't know how far they can get pushed, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not go out there and break yourself off, right? Like, you need to be able to like not do that.
We're not saying be David Goggins, right? Like
Yeah,
not everyone has to be David.
bro, like add a little spice to your life. You know what I mean? Add a little spice. Go do something that's gonna make you feel, like everybody needs a little adrenaline in their life. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody does it. Like you don't want to live boringly. You just don't. You don't want to live boringly. And I remember when you first drafted up, like when we first started talking about the podcast that I was going to be on, and you first we talked about like the questions, quick overview, and that night I had the conversation with Jomi in the car. I was like, and I told her, and this is the nerdiest shit ever, right? But I told her specifically because we talked about that danger piece or doing that dangerous
Yeah.
piece, and I told her a quote from an anime. This is how like I like kind of structure it, right? I told her, no one likes a man who stays still, right? And what I meant by that is not. By the way, it's from Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood.
Okay.
Amazing,
I was gonna ask you. I was gonna ask you
amazing
what.
anime, right? I can't remember exactly who said it. I think it was the main character, or it might have been like his wife at the end, right? Because at the end, he's able to stay home, but he chooses not to in pursuit of like greater things or other things because he's not done yet. He still wants to help other people and do a bunch of shit, right?
Yeah.
And one of them mentions like no one likes a man who stays still, or I've never liked a man who stayed still, right? And that shit made so much sense to me, bro. Like if you're forever stagnant, like no one likes someone who's forever stagnant, whether it's a man or a woman or
Oh,
whatever
yeah.
else you identify as. Like um, no one likes someone who's just stagnant, like zero progress, zero anything. Your boss don't like it, your peers don't like it, your mom ain't gonna like it, your dad ain't gonna like it. Nobody's gonna like that. Like there has to be forward movement on anything you do. What's the point of staying still, right?
Do you believe that 1% progress is better than 0% progress?
Oh yeah, I try to. I tell people all the time, like, which like I don't know if there's validity to it. I have to put it in a calculator.
Yeah.
But you take anything and you multiply it by 0.1%, it still goes up.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't put it in a calculator. I don't know how true that is, but in my brain, the idea is that no matter how small that step or like progress is, no matter how slow, 0.1% in any direction is still 0.1%. You're still moving somewhere, right? The idea is to just continue to 0.1% it constantly over and over and over and over again until you get where you need to be or you want to be. That's how I view it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're just stagnant. Like any progress is good progress. You only need to start gauging how much progress you're making when you've already made progress. But if you're just stagnant and you ain't been doing nothing at all, you gotta multiply yourself by 0.1%. You gotta go somewhere. You gotta do something. Because nobody wants to be around that.
Mm. Nobody does want to be around that. And you notice that those type of people that are okay with doing nothing are some of the most boring people you will be around. And they're fun, right? And it's funny because you have friends that are like that are like, oh well, I'm doing this, and they work the same job and they don't progress in any type of way or whatever that may be. And it's like, oh, that's great, but you've been saying that you wanted to do this for however long, and you've done
Doing
nothing.
nothing. Yeah. There's zero forward movement, and then it's just lip service. It's just lip
But
service.
is it lip service for us or them? Like, because it sounds like to me, I've always heard it, and I've always say like, this sounds like you're just kind of telling yourself that, like,
Yeah.
you're. It's not really an explanation for me. You're
Yeah.
explaining things for you outwards, like, oh, I haven't done this because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But in actuality, you're not trying to really explain that to me. You're explaining that for yourself.
You just give
But you
yourself.
just want to sound good.
Yeah. You just give. It's just words. Like you just give yourself an excuse so it sounds like you're giving forward movement. And in reality, like there is no like you're not doing anything, right? And
Yeah.
I think everybody's guilty of it in some way, shape, or form, right? Like it's always tough to like show up. It's like that's I won't take that away from anybody. Like the first step is always showing up, and it's always tough to like, especially if you don't know what you're trying to get into or how to do it, what avenue to take, right? Showing up is always like the toughest part, in my opinion. And I'm guilty of it too. Like just telling people, hey, I want to do this. You know what I mean? I will say like for me, um, a big thing is like it's like giving that lip service and then just like taking the steps to do it. And that's why I think you got to be careful sometimes about how you share your intentions because people are going to hold you to them. Yeah, like I'm guilty of it, right? Like that's why I've learned that I have to be you have to kind of be careful what you say because people are going to hold you to that.
Yeah.
People can hold you accountable or will hold you accountable. They'll fire back 6 months, a year from now, like, hey, I thought you were going to do this. Why haven't you done it yet? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, I've experienced that 100%, but that's the type of shit that keeps me honest. You know what I mean? That's the type of shit that's like, man, I have been saying I am gonna do this, but I have like made no progress on it. Maybe it's time to do that 0.1% in whatever direction I think is right. Um, and see where it goes, or just straight up be honest with myself and be like, I'm not gonna do that. I don't want to do it. Whatever. That's it.
It's very easy to get relaxed in the military. It's very
Oh,
easy. Your job is the same. What you leave on your desk today is on your desk tomorrow. And
mm-hmm.
it gets very easy to be like, oh, you know what? No matter what, I get that paycheck first and the 15th, and da 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 da, and it's the same way every single time. But then, like you said, like someone's gonna check you on what you said that you were gonna do, and then when that moment comes, you realize like, oh man, I was supposed to do this shit,
Yeah.
and you get wrapped up in just Sunday to Sunday, paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Definitely, definitely.
that's definitely true. I don't disagree. Yeah. Um, Especially in like the job that we do now, it's incredibly easy to just day in. Incredibly easy. Like it's it's almost scary in a sense. Um, yeah, incredibly easy.
That it's becomes a point where it's kind of like this is very simple. I don't need to. Eventually, you don't need that much more brain power. You don't need to increase your intelligence. You don't need to do. You can coast this for a very long time.
Yeah,
Very
you can
long
use
time. You can
like
coast this.
get back your way through, which is like it's not the right answer, right? It's an answer, but it's not the right answer per se. Especially if you want to be like an asset. You know what I mean? You don't want to be a shitbag necessarily. Because it's important to bring. Value added is always a plus. You shouldn't just be like a
Yeah,
place. Like there are like very few times where it's okay to just be like a placeholder. Um, but those times are so far few and far between that you know you shouldn't get comfortable doing that all the time.
like you said from the beginning, nobody wants anybody that stays still. Like staying
Hmm.
still will legitimately drain your life. And this is where like I'm at right now, where it's a point of all right, there needs to be action. Like there needs to be action. There's no point in you can't read the books all day. You can't watch the podcast all day. You can't read all day. You got to do something.
Yeah,
You got to eventually put pen to paper and actually make something happen.
yeah.
Um, and something that I've noticed in the military is like you can do that. You can put pen to paper eventually, but it's going to be very annoying before you get there. Like it's going to be some of the most annoyingest shit that's going to low key make you want to not be there anymore.
Not yeah.
And yeah, and it keeps happening. And it's funny that we talk about the military and where they're going right now. Something that I did want to mention doesn't need to be long, but the 14% pay increase for the E1 through E4.
Hmm.
Now, I don't agree
No.
because no, not really, and not because it's like a when I was in, we had to do blah
Yeah,
blah
not no.
blah, right? But like
Yeah, why?
the increase, if you're not going to do it across the board,
Hmm.
don't do it because now there's legitimately no incentive to pick up five.
Oh, yeah. I see what you're saying. Yeah. That's a really good point. Yeah, I don't.
The
Yeah,
the paycheck, I think that we saw it like the paycheck between 5 and 4 was like $20 off.
which is crazy because 4 and 5 between the difference between 4 and 5 used to be a few $100s.
Yeah,
It used to be a few $100s. So there was like also that pay incentive to like get promoted.
to get there exactly.
Yeah, I don't disagree at all. Especially being like in the job we are now. Um,
Boy,
dudes
boy,
are dudes already aren't like trying to reach out to that extra step and like necessarily be that NCO and things like that of that
yeah,
nature. I can't imagine like the newer blood is gonna be like chomping at the bit to reach E5.
at
Um,
all.
a point, right? If there's no point
More
at all.
responsibility.
Hmm.
Your annual what are they called? Counseling, the NCOERs, and going through all of that, and just being like you said, having to now lead and pick up other responsibilities. You're gonna be like, why? When I was
Yeah.
a 4, I made $20 less, and was doing less, and y'all expected less of me.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. Yeah, I didn't know it was that close. I knew it was gonna be closer. I didn't know that the gap was gonna be closed by that much.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's kind of weird. It's kind of scary,
and
low key.
it's extremely awkward. Where it's like, why would I pick up five? Why would before even? Why would I pick up five? Why would I even re-enlist at this point?
Yeah, but then like then you have that like that flip side, right? Where it's like, um, why are you doing this? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Right? Um, because you got some dudes, especially like, uh, especially here and where you're at, that like will do their stint and then get out, right?
yeah,
Which is fine. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You catch me at work, I'm gonna talk shit to you for it, because that's just how I am. I don't actually mean it, right? Like I don't care.
yeah.
Like especially for y'all, especially for these dudes. Like if I was in their position and this is my first contract, I'd probably be in the same boat. The way the job market looks for y'all,
Yeah, 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 yeah,
I would
yeah.
be considering it like crazy, right? But then there's like the rest of the army that's like there's that hope, at least for me, that's like that wants dudes to want to be an NCO. You know what I mean? Regardless of pay. Granted, pay is a really big portion of it, right? I'm sure money, money makes everyone go around.
Yeah, exactly.
Money's nice. I'm chasing money. That's why I want six, right?
Yeah,
Um, that's my primary reason. But I also want six because like I can handle six. You know what I mean? I'm not
yeah.
like afraid to be a six at all. Like that's a non-factor for me. Like I know, like I'm gonna do my best, and that's it. But that's where like I was saying, like I hope that people will look past. There's that hope in me that if that fake motivation turned real. There's that hope in me that people are doing this more than the money. And it's a lot to ask. It really is.
It is.
But that's the whole idea of a volunteer service. You know what I mean? Like we don't do this shit to be rich. I don't do this shit to be rich at all. I never did. I don't even like the idea of being rich to me isn't even like it's not even ascertainable to me just because like I can't imagine having so much money that I don't know what to do with. I think I would be legitimately bored and just go to work anyways.
And you're one of those type of people that this is why I asked you about why do we do the dangerous jobs and stuff like that. It's because you're like, I don't care about the money. It's like you said, it's the ego, it's the clout in the job itself, right? Like
Yeah,
being able to be like going ranger, right? Going green beret or going any type of special forces in any sense, you have that title to be like, listen,
yeah,
this is me. Like,
yeah.
take the
Like,
money away, I'm still this person. Like,
yeah, I like doing this shit. I don't do this shit because the money, like that's a plus. I do this shit because like I like to do it. You know what
I
I mean?
like,
I'm
yeah,
across the board, all those dudes, and any of that community, um, where I would like to be a part of. I think that's why that community is so successful in all their endeavors, is that the dudes who do it don't do it for money, and I'm pretty sure the dudes who do it for money don't stick around long because realistically, the shit that community has to do, it ain't worth the money
it
that you
ain't
get.
worth the money, not at all, not at
Worth the
all.
No, no, in no way, shape, or form. It is not worth the money that they get paid to do. To do it at the level that they do at, hell no. And
Fuck
then
no.
that's the difference, right? Like that's like the difference where it's like, you want to be surrounded by people that care more than about um, the job or doing whatever it is, than just like a paycheck at the end of the day that's gonna come regardless. You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? That's what it is. Yeah, that's what I think about it. There's that hope in me that people will, see this as more than just like a paycheck or a stepping stone.
yeah.
Because I was like that my first contract. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get out. I'm gonna be a state trooper. Blah blah blah. Look at me. I'm staring down the barrel of a fucking indefinite reenlistment now.
And yeah, it's crazy because now I'm sitting thinking about I've been talking about being a pilot this whole time, and it's like, yo, I want to fly, but then I'll be like, I want to fly, do whatever. And people are like, are you still gonna get that sense of danger? I'm like, I don't know because something about it's funny because it's kind of like we got brainwashed as kids.
Yeah, yeah,
You want to be the guy in the video.
yeah,
You want to be the guy in the game. You want to be the guy in the movies. That that, like you said, right? You want to use anime about it. You want to be that protagonist. Like
Yeah, character.
you
Yeah, or
don't want to be
character's
you.
posse, at the very
And
least.
it's funny because people talk about it like, oh, why would you want to do that dangerous job and so on and so on. It's like because you wake up and you know for a fact this is what I do. Like
Nobody
something
else.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
nobody's doing it.
nobody
Nobody's
else.
doing it.
Nobody else is doing like me. And that it sounds like weirdly self-centered when you say it out loud, but like I don't give a fuck. Like it's just that's just the reality, right? There's
Yeah,
there's nothing. There is no like a big portion of me joining the military is like was to build that picture or try to remodel myself as that the of what I thought like a essentially like a man is supposed to be, right?
yeah,
Like you have this dude, whoever it is, like in my brain is like goes out, handles work, knows how to get shit done, goes away for whatever reason, service to his country, service to others, whatever the case is, comes back and is a family man. And not only that, like especially with a kid now, bro, like I didn't really have anybody per se, like at least a male figure to look up to and be like, yo, you're cool as fuck. That was like necessarily attached to me of like the way a father would be. You
yeah,
know what
yeah, yeah,
I didn't really have that. Like me and my dad are cool now. But we had a really rocky relationship, and I just didn't have that. So I had to build my own, like, I had to take from this person that I saw, and that person, and this person that I
yeah.
knew, make this little fucking like Play-Doh model of what I think it should be, and that's what I'm trying to turn myself into. And it's not like I'm trying to be like the most badass fucking Delta Force fucking shooter on the planet, whatever the
Yeah.
case. But like, I don't want my kid looking up to another dude, or someone else. Um, for his traits or whatever he does, right? Like I'm here, it's different if I wasn't here, right? But if
Yeah.
I, and I'm actively doing these things, like there's I don't think there's a better feeling than even in general having someone look up to you and be like super proud to be like your friend, your acquaintance, work with you. Um, I don't think there's a better feeling than that. Well, I mean, there are better feelings out there, but I mean, like, I think it's important to know or feel that like the people around you um, trust you because of like the things that you can do and you do for them and things like that, right? Especially with a kid, for anyone that's deployed, like I don't think that like there's a better feeling than their kid running up to them and be like, "Oh, like I miss you, like you're so cool." You know what I mean?
First of all,
There's
you're so cool.
yeah, I don't think there's gonna be there's a or just your kid looking at you and be like, "Yeah, like that's my dad." Like I don't care if your dad is more badass, but I know what my dad is and he's pretty fucking cool too. You know what I mean? Um, that's like my view on it, right? Cool is relative to whoever you are and whatever you think is cool. But you take a pilot to a fucking a show and tell or a career day, and you put them next to a fucking the people we work with now, and
Yeah.
it's gonna be kind of like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
the
Yeah,
initial
for a
glance,
fact.
like, oh, no contest, no contest.
It's crazy you say like that because then I think this is what happens with like the people that are like, because I am a person that is like, yo, I want to make as much money as possible and so on and so on and things like that.
Hmm.
We all know that, but then having that feeling of a job purpose and stuff like I think this is like the same concept, right? Like some people get it within the job, some people get it within their finances, right? And we see it and we go, okay, as a guy, it's like I have enough money that my son goes, that's my dad. My dad gets me whatever I want, da 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 da, so on and so on.
Oh, shit.
Or, like you said, the other way where it's like, that's my dad. That motherfucker is up at 5 a.m. doing so and so and so on, but somehow still shows up on my games, still doing this, so on and so on. My dad is a pilot. Like you said, like the people that we work with, shit that goes into even just staying in shape, right?
Hmm.
Like you, your dad is you know, shaped like a donut, right? Like the wrong shapes, and you have a dad that comes up and is like stocky and everything else, and you're like, damn, you could. People don't act like people act like they don't notice it, but there's a presence that walks in, and you're just like, what the fuck?
Yeah,
Who
you're like,
who the fuck is that guy? And then
yeah,
as as a dad, you're probably like, yeah, I know what you mean. Where you're like, and it's funny because you said it just for your son, but anybody, right? Your wife, your mom, your dad, your
Yeah.
siblings, your
Like I
friends.
want to be proud to know me, to work with me, or like not even proud. Like you ain't got to come up to me and be like, "Oh my God, thank you so much." Just now. Like I just want you to know that, like, I just want you to. I want to get to a point where um I have that presence and everybody's
Yeah,
confident in what I can do, and whether that's attainable or not, right? Um, I'm just trying my best every day to get to some form of that. You know what I mean? And for the people like that are gonna watch this, like I'm not saying that it has to come from like your job, right? It doesn't have to be physical. It can be anything. It can be literally anything that gives you some sort of like presence and confidence in the person that you are. That's also like comforting around the people that you're normally with, right? And that's like the goal
yeah,
for me. That's the goal. Whether like, if my wife heard this right now, she'd be like, "Oh, like I already feel like that," and I'm like, "That's cool, but it doesn't matter what you think. It matters what I think." Right? Like, yes, it matters what you think, but like, you're not the voice in my head 24/7 when I wake up or when I have to go run or I have to go work out or I have to go
yeah,
to right. Like, I'm my hardest critic, and it might be unhealthy. Some people probably view it as unhealthy, but like I'm always trying to chase, and I'm not perfect in any way, shape, or form. Nobody is, because nobody can go 100 miles per hour every fucking day, right?
yeah,
Everybody needs a break, um, but everybody needs that forward motion, that like
yeah.
that they're going somewhere.
Like you said, that voice in your head, because like, and no, and it's not that we don't give a fuck about what our family say or our loved
Yeah,
ones, whatever the case is. Yeah, it means a lot. But when you lay down, or when you go on a run, or when you're at work, or when you're at the gym, or wherever you may be, and that dooming feeling of, hey, bitch, you're not doing enough.
yeah.
Right?
Or
Like you're like,
you haven't figured this out yet, or you still got
yeah,
work. Like
yeah.
it's a different it's just a different feeling, right? And
I went,
that's
I
that.
went, I went through that last night. I was, because obviously I live by myself, and I will definitely say that shit hits. And when you can just be sitting there, and everything can be a okay, and you say, setting up Christmas lights and all this other stuff, and I feel all festive. And then when I sat my ass down, I'm sitting there, I'm like, and I hear, you're still not there, and I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck,
Like, okay, what's next? Like,
what's
what do you
next?
are you
Yeah.
sitting with? Like, there's something to do. And you're just like, well, fuck, like, uh, and right?
You look around, you be like, I thought I did enough. I thought I did everything right now. And somehow, some way, your brain will be like, no. And like you said, some people might sit there and say, oh, this is bad. You're not supposed to think like that, and so on and so on. But I've
Yeah,
noticed this on like, from a lot of the few high performers. High performing people will never not feel like they've done enough. There's always something. There's always something else to do. And until they get to that point, and that moment of like, it was funny. I just saw the quote recently, but to paraphrase it, it's, if you feel like you're lost, you're not doing enough, right?
yeah,
Or like if you ever feel like you're stuck, you're not doing enough. You need to be doing more. And people are like, oh, what about work life balance? And I'm like, you know what? I'm starting to throw that away, because I'm like, the feeling of being proud within yourself is starting to feel way more important than work life balance.
yeah,
Work life balance doesn't mean anything if I'm not really giving everything I got. Like, if that may be 6 days out of 7 days a week that I need to be performing, because then whatever the balance may be. Sure, you still have to have fun, sure, but what is fun at that point, right? Is fun
yeah,
going on vacations and things like that, or is fun sitting back and looking at your work, right?
yeah.
Like,
Like you're completed whatever you like set out to do.
yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I'm all for it. You already know, because we talk about this whole dangerous job stuff, and I don't want people to think that we're just over here like,
yeah,
we understand that the people that's been in combat, the people that's been in bad situations, nobody wants to be there,
yeah.
right? But
We've all seen the
we,
podcast. Like those dudes are like, if I could rewind time, like I would
I
not
wouldn't
go.
do it.
Yeah, I wouldn't do it. It's not worth it.
It's
Yeah,
not at all.
we all get that piece. For sure.
but we respect them more because they went through it.
Because they did it, yeah.
And I
So now,
think that's what we're looking for.
yeah, it's like this weird chasing thing where we're like, you know, I'm trying to get there too.
Yeah.
But I know it's not recommended. It's just weird like little cat and mouse game. It's definitely a weird cat and mouse game. And it's a slippery slope too, right? Because you don't want to develop a fucking an inferiority complex, right? Because then you're never gonna stop working. You're never gonna
Oh,
be
yeah.
enjoying. You could have a completed project that you set out to do way beforehand, and when you do it, you're just like, oh, whatever, on to the next thing. You can't enjoy it, right? So there's like it's a slippery slope for sure. Like you gotta take the little wins when they're there. But it's getting too comfortable for too long. You know what I mean? Like enjoy the fruits of your labor, but then get back to work
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah.
Like there's always another project. There's always some other forward motion to make than just like that one thing and that's it.
I'm, bro, I'm dead ass glad to talk to you about this because, I always feel like most people don't understand how much this really, like, matters to us, right? Because it's like, oh, you shouldn't have to, and things like that. And I always tell people, like, people come to me and be like, you're doing good. And I'm like, no, I'm not.
No,
And then they're like, you're
yeah,
doing great. Like, compared to other 28-year-olds, I'm like, stop comparing me, right? Like, because I always end up saying to them, I always say, like, and this sounds crazy, but lions don't compare themselves to sheep. And I'm like, when you're running around people that are, and there's no offense to them, but it's like when you're running around people that are a little bit slower, a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more comfortable, things like that, it's gonna sound good. It's gonna sound great. Oh yeah, you're doing great. And then you can be like, yeah, you're right. You know what? I do deserve this. I do deserve that. But then when you're running around other lines all day, oh shit, they're gonna keep you sharp
hmm
all fucking day. They're gonna keep you sharp. When you run around with other predators, you're gonna be like, damn, I have more shit to do.
yeah, and I think that's where like that expectation management and like that like inferiority complex and like slippery slope comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because I know
But don't
being
get
at the
it twisted.
yeah
Lions have fun. Animals have fun, right? It's not that you are not having fun while you're doing it. Because again, if we want to keep it on the predatory side, animals have fun with each other. Whatever the case is, a lion's a lion. But I like watching animal videos all day. They be fucking with each other, right? Like they be bothering each other. They have fun. But it's knowing that you run around with other
that
lions, right?
yeah
Like you run around with other sharp people because
yeah
sharp people can know how to have fun. But when fun time is over, it's
hmm
back to work
it's back to
versus
work.
running around with sheep where they're just kind of like all day. It's just like,
It's just the same bullshit.
man, we're just going to do this. That's what we're
Yeah,
doing, whatever. But yo,
yeah.
bro, thank you for showing up. This was a great podcast. You know what I'm saying? I don't
Thanks
know,
for
you know what I'm saying? If I'm surprised. I heard Matt like